Right now we wanted to jump in and get started. The three folks up here I have the distinct honor of calling my friends and got to know them over a while. And they're also three of the folks in the tech space that I think are some of the most accomplished, interesting, prolific entrepreneurs. And I've learned a lot from each of you, and I know that everyone here tonight is going to have a great opportunity. So I just wanted to jump in. If you could take about a minute or so and give a bit about your background and what the company was that you bootstrapped. And then we'll just get into kind of a group discussion at some point. We'll open up to the audience where they can ask some questions as well. So, Paige, if you could start. I know most folks know you as the preeminent angel investor of Southern California, but they may not have known what you did before that.
Sure. So before I started angel investing, I built a company called Lincoln Group, drove into Baghdad in 2003, and sort of did human intelligence and information warfare. Really bootstrapped it, literally went in with about $10,000 in cash, and basically took my house and my credit cards and used that to build my company. So had to convince people to go into crazy sort of places for almost no cash and live the dream, have fun. So happy to talk about that. It was a really exciting experience, and hopefully someone can learn something about that. How
long did you run that company for?
I ran it for 4 years.
And you did try to raise money, right?
I tried to raise $100,000 for 49% of my company.
That would have been a pretty good deal in retrospect.
Yeah, pretty good return.
Right. Josh?
Hey, my name is Josh. I started a company called GoSub60 8 years ago. Our consumer-facing name is MobileDelux. That's what we changed to about 2.5 years ago. It's been bootstrapped ever since inception. Earlier this year, and actually starting back in 2008, we were the only non-venture funded top 10 mobile games company in the space. We invest heavily in our internal technology. And have for 8 years, so we've got a great platform. And we were doing, mobile games, mobile apps 8 years ago. So it's kind of refreshing to see kind of the progress of this space, see where people are now, and just how prevalent it is. It's such a different space than it was when we were starting off so long ago.
I love it. I got to follow these guys. My original company was Wilshire Coin. We bought and sold coins. I was 19 years old.
Who are you?
Mark Verge, and I
Thank
probably
you.
owe a bunch of people money in here, so don't say my name too loud. So I started this gold company, a guy who had owned it. He was my mentor, so I took over this business without a dime. I mean, really. So you'd buy gold. I'd have to run out to Continental Coin and sell the gold. So it was a constant of moving checks, and I was truly bootstrapping. I was broke, and so it was a lot of getting my customers to buy into my vision, and it was always like, you're going to be my customer for life. And I had that company for about 5 years, and I eventually sold, but I was truly broke and buying, $40,000 worth of gold just on a trust factor, running out, selling it, making $4,000, and coming back and delivering everything he needed to the customer. So what I tried to do is just over-deliver, and it was a lot of promising. So I was truly bootstrapping like you can't believe, and a lot of embellishing.
But then from there, I mean, most people know you for?
I started a company, Westside Rentals, but I had some money then. But I'll get back. Believe me, I was very poor for a long time, so I
yeah, but you still bootstrapped. I mean, you didn't raise outside money for Westside Rentals.
No, started at Westside Rentals with some money, and that was just honestly going up and sucking up to every owner in Los Angeles, including your father.
So by the way, my dad's here, who I learned the most from about bootstrapping and entrepreneur. Dad, raise your hand.
Come on.
There, yeah. All right, and I think most people know Westside Rentals in part because of Westside Rentals Man.
Oh, stand up, please. Do we have a witness? Oh, yes. Be nice to everyone, Phil. There he goes.
And do we have any Westside Rental t-shirts we're going to be throwing around later?
Oh, we will. Trust me, Doc.
So, but there's more to it though also, because there's the gold coin business. There's Westside. How many folks work at Westside Rentals now?
I'm probably about 90 right now.
There's 90 people that work there.
Right there.
And then there are about 20 other businesses in LA that you own.
I got into bars and hotels and restaurants, which anyone wants to hear about the bar business, just stay out of it unless you want to live there. But I'm in 9 bars right now, bars and restaurants.
How many bars? So 9 bars and restaurants?
Right. Great. So it's fun, but it's just a lot of work. And I don't live at my bar. And if you're going to open a bar, even though everyone says it's so attractive, really think about that, especially if you're married and faithful with 2 kids. It's not a good spot to be.
So apparently if you're married and not faithful,
yeah, have fun.
Open a bar.
You'll love it.
Great
You'll be broke, but you'll love it.
Great. And if throughout the evening you've got questions, For the panelists, you can reach him at Paige Craig. He's currently Twittering right now. Paige is the master of multitasking. We've got Mark, who's at Access to Boys Club. And I couldn't find your Twitter, Josh. What was it?
No, you can't find my Twitter.
There's no Twitter.
No.
Is there an email they
It's
can hit you up at?
Yeah, just Josh goes at GoSub60.
Josh at GoSub60.
Yeah.
You're on
All right.
High Five, right?
Huh?
You're on High Five?
No, we're.
You got your Bebo account live?
No, man. It's all through the
You
company.
guys realize we have like a whole audience here besides your
Somebody
private
else if you,
conversation.
send it.
All right, so let's jump in. One of the things that I'm always most curious about is, okay, you didn't raise any money. So did any of you come from really wealthy backgrounds where you had a bunch of money to start out? Is that how you were able to get your business off the ground? Because one of the things that you most commonly hear people say is, well, I've got this great idea for a business, but I just don't have any money to do it. So were you like Silver Spoon style, Paige?
Yeah, not really. You know, I was in the Marine Corps before that, and I worked for the intelligence community, so I did.
What were you getting paid in the Marines again? You told me this, and I really couldn't believe it.
I think it was about 16 grand at the heyday of my career, annual,
Wow.
with benefits, big toys.
Gotcha. All right. So you didn't start with any.
No.
Gotcha.
Just had to make it up as I went.
Josh?
No, didn't start with any silver spoons or anything. We essentially broke the 401k, broke any retirement account that we had, and that was the funding. That was it. So it was just make a decision whether you think something can be successful, and take whatever cash you have, and that, which was virtually zero.
Yeah. And Mark?
No, I grew up, my family decent. My father was a teacher at Santa Monica College, grew up with 6 kids. But my motivation, actually, I grew up around a lot of wealthy kids. And I didn't grow up with much money, but I knew I wanted to have some money, so I'd work my tail off. And seriously, trying to make money. But at the time, no, not much at all. And believe me, my parents weren't going to loan me a dime. So, but it was definitely a struggle.
All right, so let's talk about, what did you do in that first business when you didn't have a lot of capital to really distinguish yourself and make enough capital so that you could keep it growing? What were some of the things that you did early on that really helped you break through?
For me, I don't know if you guys want to go first. For me, I just tried to over-deliver. Everything I did was over-deliver. Whatever it was, I beat anyone's price. Anything I could do was, I just tried to over-deliver at any rate. It was insanity. But if people didn't have the exact money to pay us, they paid me later. I went on a whole trust factor. And
This
really,
was in a gold business.
Oh, the gold, and it was insane. There was days you were really nervous that someone was going to show up, and you had to really trust the person that you were dealing with. But it was always over-delivering. I would promise my customers things like, I'll just bring it to your house. And like, you don't even know where I live. I'm like, don't worry. Where do you live? I'll be there. And I'd show up, and because I needed to make money, and I had to cover checks. So it's like, it was very important to keep that relationship with the gold dealers and the banks.
Good deal.
Josh?
Let's see. Early on, I think the biggest things we did, I think over-delivering, I think that's huge. You have to leverage past relationships in the businesses that you've already been involved with. Maybe leveraging is not the best word, but you've got to use those contacts and try to launch yourself. Make your company perhaps seem a little bigger than it is. That was definitely one of the key early ingredients.
So how did you do that? What was an example of how you made your company seem bigger than it was?
I was not the CEO. I got promoted later to be CEO. So I was a VP when I started the company. I think that helped. Just different tricks like that and referencing other departments within the organization, even though that might be you. I think that's also useful. Trying to, when you do a startup like that too, you might not start off in office space. We certainly didn't. So it was me working out of my living room, partner working out of his living room. So it's key to make it seem bigger. So not always have free time. Like you always want to give a phone call. Take a meeting whenever you can land one. But initially make your calendar seem perhaps more full than it actually is. And don't get me wrong, your calendar will be full, but it's really doing a lot of hustle work as opposed to a lot of standing engagements. So that was yet another trick, I think, to make it seem bigger.
Okay. Yeah. What about you, Paige?
There's a lot of things. I couldn't raise 100 grand, so I had some property in DC that I bought on a veterans loan.
What was the big feedback you were getting? Like, what was the pushback you were getting? Was it just people thought you were too young or inexperienced? I mean, you were trying to raise money to build a team to go out to Iraq, right?
No, they thought I'd probably get killed, so they were like...
That's a relatively hard objection to overcome.
Yeah. Well, that was
not your standard VC objection wherever you are, Dave. So you're going to get killed in this business, huh?
Yeah, I mean, that was my barrier to entry. I figured, the SEICs, Northrop Grumman's of the world, no one would go downrange the way I would. So that was a barrier to entry. I figured people would be smart enough to invest in that. But to get the resources to do it, to get that money, I took an equity line of credit out in some property. I had bought up really nasty properties in DC and fixed them up myself and built some sweat equity and put myself upside down on those properties to get cash and maxed out credit cards, skipped payments, hurt my credit score, but it worked out for me.
And I mean, maybe sounds, but were you okay with that risk because you had literally, I mean, like risked your life before? I mean, where did your tolerance for risk come from?
I have a lot of tolerance for risk.
I'd say.
No, I mean, it's for me. I know it's extreme to some, but I enjoy it. So it was my kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
then as far as like when you're talking about resources, like so even I think I scrambled like roughly $75,000 to a HELOC and use my credit card. So then you go down range and have to hire security teams and have to get weapons off the black market and have to get vehicles and have to get office space and have to run around in a space with basically no security. So I trained my own security teams and I got weapons by trading favors, and I lived in a crappy bombed out building that had rats coming out of the shower. Like you'd shower and there's like pipes held together by rope, and then we'd play, you'd have rats coming up, and it was kind of fun. But you don't really go for any luxury. But everyone's very focused on saving money when you live like that. But the big thing was you sell like this vision, and people have to realize that you're doing something great. So when I recruited my early employees, both local nationals and Americans, and they would come over and they'd work for 50 grand in a war zone, it was about, let's change the world. Let's do something important here. And you'd have to get people to believe in the dream. And then when you don't have money or assets, you trade favors. So I traded favors to get weapons, to get vehicles, to get things done. I would do whatever it took. Like you said, you over-deliver. I built my first, I built the company on a $3,000 contract, where I was like, I'll do anything for you. You want people you want things done, I'll do it.
So this is being filmed, but
all totally legal stuff.
Yeah. Actually, Paige and I did an episode of Twist This Week in Startups, and he made points to tell me, if you ask me any question about my national security background, I have no problem coming across the table and doing very bad things to you. You were a little bit more explicit, but I think we were okay in that interview.
Yeah, we got it.
All right. So one of the things that I'm always really interested in is I think a lot of people have heard me say things like, what's important when you start a company is not asking questions like what to do and how to do it, but why. What's the why that drives you? Because times are going to get really hard, and the fact of the matter is, it's you find that resourcefulness. You figure out what to do if you've got something really big that's burning inside of you and motivating you to be successful. So maybe, Mark, starting with you, like you mentioned part of it, but was the big thing driving you just that you were around a bunch of other rich people and you wanted that, or was it something else?
That was the first original intent to get into my own business. But God, Paige, I hope my wife's not here, because you're a stud. I'd watch out. My wife will leave with you. So, honey, get out of here. No, my wife's not here, thank God.
Well, then she can run.
It's funny. I wrote down when I started Westside Rentals. It's funny because I said I had to have a mission, and my mission was to take out the LA Times. As nutty as that sounded, when I'd meet with owners, I'd say, this is free. You can list your apartment here free. I'll run credit checks for you free. I'll do photos free. And they'd be always like, what are you doing? I said, I want to take out the LA Times. Because at the time, I was advertising with the LA Times, and they were just ripping me off every week. And it would drive me nuts. And then they had me because all my advertising was, all my calls were coming through the LA Times. So they'd raise the rate one day, just on a whim. They'd like, oh, we're going to double your rate. And I'm like, you're killing me. And so my mission truly was, I'm going to take out the LA Times. And I'd tell every owner. And it was like a statement that I just lived by. And then everyone in the office would be like, we're going to take out the LA Times. And at the time, all the owners were like, you guys are crazy. And we were absolutely nuts. Not as nutty as you, but we were crazy to the LA Times. You were going after the world. So that's what it was. It was really a mission of just craziness.
You have to have it.
So
You have to. But it's so clear at the time. The vision, like everyone else isn't listening to you, but the vision to me was like, this is going to work. And my wife's looking at me like, we're losing money every month. I'm like, no, this is going to work, and we're going to do things here. And it's like, to me, the vision seemed clear.
And but then what about today? I mean, what's the main thing that's driving you today to be more successful?
Yeah, I think I just enjoy trying to deliver a nice product and do the right things in business. And my problem is I love every business. I mean, tonight someone will come up with a business idea, and I'll be like, I'm in. I was talking to a lady last week about a portion control business, and I don't know if it happens to you guys, but every business I hear I think is phenomenal. It's like, it really is. It's like, that's the greatest idea I've ever heard. My wife has a rule. I do not want to start another business this month. I mean, she says it all the time because every business.
It's a little ironic that you'd be investing in a portion control business, if that's
what it is. I love that idea, though.
of-
You eat the portions and you get your portion control every day, and that's all you can eat, but you can eat whatever you want. I think that's great.
Right. So apparently, if you do need to raise money for business, just go to Mark, because he can't say no.
Yeah, exactly.
We should have had you as like Santa Claus for our December Startups Uncensored. Josh, like what's the thing that drove you to be successful and look like Paul Bunyan?
All right, so two different questions. I think the why portion initially was, mobile games and mobile apps were projected to be quite a hockey stick back in 2001, 2002. So that really helps fuel a big part of the why equation is the potential in the space, and if you're bringing something different to the table. And then, the other side of that why equation was necessity. I'm a firm believer in necessity being the mother of invention. And for me personally, it was one job ending, having just bought my first piece of property, about to have my second child. So there was a lot of necessity to make this business work. So
you took a really big risk at a time where most people want to, I hear so often from folks, hey, I'd love to come work at DocSoc or a startup, but I've got a family, I've got kids, just too difficult of a time. You had just bought a piece of property, you just had your second kid, and you went to go start a business for which there wasn't even going to be any money?
Right. So there weren't a lot of options for
and you're
failure.
still married to that same person.
Still married. We've got an additional child now. All the children are for sale, and it's they're all boys. So it could be the reason why I have this beard. I simply don't have the time to shave. So yeah, it was really necessity. There was a huge opportunity there, and it was the big driving factor was we've got to make this work. There's no option. Yeah. So you can't really put it more succinctly than that. I think you have to do it.
Yeah. Paige, what about you? What was the stuff that was? Why did you think, hey, I'm gonna uproot my life, drive, just go to Baghdad with $10,000 and start this business? What was the thing that was pushing and driving you?
I guess primarily, there's like a mix of fun. It sounded fun.
It did.
Yeah.
Really?
No, really. You picture yourself like, hey, I can just jump into a country and make something happen. And that gets to it's an intellectual challenge, it's a physical challenge, it's a big challenge. So I always say entrepreneurs are people that like to solve problems, and those could be big problems, they could be small problems, they could be apps that you create in the iPhone store, they could be game-changing e-com sites like Zappos that have a big vision. They could be bars that simply are fun places for people to get together, but entrepreneurs solve problems. And I like to solve problems, I like to help people. So I try to tackle big things in life, and yeah, I guess that's one of the motivations is just big challenges and making a difference.
So let's talk about you and I have talked about this a bunch before, but the characteristics that make for successful entrepreneurs. So you started investing in tech companies as an angel investor about a year and a half ago now.
Yep.
And how many companies have you invested in that time?
It's a little over 30.
You've invested over 30 companies, so I think that beats out most venture capital firms in that time. And how much on average will you put into a company?
It's about 50K right now. I've done a few multi-hundred, but I kind of brought it down to about 50K after talking to Brad about sort of how to do it.
Okay. So on average, you're investing $50,000 in companies. This is very early on. You're typically the first money in. What are the characteristics that you're most looking for in the entrepreneurs that you work with? That how do you know? Because obviously, it doesn't seem like you're going too deep into the business. You're not doing diligence on it for a month. Obviously, it's a sector you like, but if the main variable for you is this is an entrepreneur I really believe in, or if that's one of the main variables, what are the characteristics you look for? And then to Josh and Mark, what are the characteristics that you think are most important entrepreneurs when they're first starting out and need to be successful to bootstrap their business?
So I look for passion, like the same drive that I have for an idea. I want to see that reflected in the ideas of the entrepreneur. So
what does passion look like? Does it mean somebody talks excited? I mean,
no.
What does passion mean?
You have to look past the superficial. Like, I've invested in people that a lot of people passed on for a long time. So it's beyond the superficial. You have to engage someone for a bit, and it's a lot of nuances. But essentially, you're looking for someone who dreams about what they're doing at night. They think about it all day long. They have their effort focused on this idea. When you ask them off-the-wall questions, they can innovate very quickly around it. Like, you can tell that they have thought about it a lot, and then they've put in their time and their resources to make it happen. And
so part of passion is preparedness. That's how you know that somebody's serious about something?
It's preparedness, but it's also that you are willing to do anything to make it successful. Because as an entrepreneur, you'll hit a point, no matter how grandiose your visions and how sure you are of success, that things will go wrong. And if you're not passionate about it, you'll give up. And I don't want to invest in someone who will give up. So passion is a big one. Intellect is important. We talked about how it comes in many different varieties, but passion becomes foremost. Experience in the sector. When I look at a guy like Alex Shankman, when I invested in Gotcast, it was about a lot of those things, plus the fact that Alec actually had experience. So he had the connections and the framework and the knowledge of how to win in that industry. And then when you talk about, you can't do the research, I think one thing for an investor to do is to understand what you invest in ahead of time. So I'm a thematic investor, so I sit and keep moleskins of all the ideas I have every day. Mm-hmm. So you do the reverse pattern matching, which is I have a lot of companies I want to fund, and then I'm constantly looking for entrepreneurs who hit one of those frameworks. So I've already thought about it. I've thought about the market and the business model and how it could work.
Okay.
So I can skip sort of that due diligence and just look right at the founders.
Josh, and let's, if the Earbit guys can come up and grab the mic from Eric, because after this round, I'm going to have you guys come up and we can see some entrepreneurs live that are bootstrapping their business. Josh, what are the characteristics that you think are most important to help people be successful as entrepreneurs and bootstrapping their businesses?
I think you have to have a lot of confidence that you can make it work. I think that's the case whether you're bootstrapping or trying to raise capital. You got to have a lot of confidence, a lot of belief in yourself, a lot of belief in your idea, and that's really got to come across, I think, with every vendor that you talk to, especially. Let's see, and you got to be resourceful. I mean, to bootstrap, you have to know how flexible the people that you have to pay are, and you kind of have to rank them sometimes in order of flexibility, and you've got to have a good sense of where all of the money is going and where it's all coming from. You got to be really diligent on cash flow. So if you want to bootstrap, you've either got to be with somebody that is really good with finance, or take that on yourself and be really diligent about it.
Great. Mark?
I love that passion and different points that you guys make, because I think when you get approached by people, too many times people come to me for money and all they say is, I just want you to invest. And without, like, I don't want your brain power or something like that. It's like all you're doing is coming to me for one thing, and I think I hate that more than anything. It's like, come up and understand why you want me to invest. I mean, it can't be just for the money. I have to bring, even if you're going to lie to me, please just lie to me. But it's like so many people, but I love what you said too, is like, you got to have those people who, they think about it all day long to the point where their friends are tired of hearing about it, where everyone's tired of hearing about it. And it's got to be, and I love, if they know every, ounce of it. And I love that part of it. And I think I always tell entrepreneurs, I'm driven by passion, but also fear. And I'm always driven by that thing, like, I can't fail here. I got to do this. I got to do this. And I think that has to drive you. But I love the idea of just, it can't be this thing on a whim, and it can't be, I just want to make a lot of money because the guy who has a coffee shop, they're making a lot of money. That's the worst thing to hear. It's like, why? Why are you changing the world? What are you doing here? I love that. So.
Can you talk about that a bit more? Because that's actually something I've heard in common from a lot of folks, and I felt the same way sometimes, but not a lot of people will talk about. What do you mean you have to be driven by fear?
It's just, what are you afraid of? How are you going to buy this property and support your kids? I mean, why are you waking up at 3:30 in the morning and going down to make copies for people who want an apartment list? I was in fear. I had bought a condo with my wife, and she was like, we're putting every dime into this business. I was in fear at the time, and it was for her. No, but it's just, you got to understand that this is, you're waking up and you're working every day here. I mean, you got to have your friends saying, all you do is work. I mean, that's what it's got to be, and it's got to be something that, it's got to be your passion, but also the fear that you can't fail. You've told everyone about this, and now you're doing it. And now you got to do it because you're right, you can't quit. And so many times it's like, it's too easy to quit. I mean, everyone makes it so easy. But if you can get people like that, those are the ones.
Great. So, Yotam, come on up. We're going to have you do your presentation. What I'd like the three of you to think about is, I want to go into some real specifics. So I think we've done a good job of covering the generalities, but think of some examples of what things specifically you did really to give yourself a leg up, a competitive advantage, a trick, whether it's a department, and let's share that, because what our goal here is, let's just, by a round of hands, how many of you right now are either running your own business or planning the next 6 months to start your business? And how many of you, keep your hands up, how many of you here have raised more than $500,000? So you can see the vast majority of the folks in this room are entrepreneurs and running businesses, and the vast majority of folks haven't really raised that much money. And so let's give them something tangible and meaty to hold on to, what some of the specifics were of what you did in your different businesses to really give yourself that competitive advantage. So Paige, I'm going to start with you because I'm always fascinated by some of the things that you had to do. Like early on, when there still wasn't a lot of money, what were some of the specific things that you had to do to give yourself a competitive advantage in lieu of having a lot of resources, a big team, reputation, and a lot of capital?
We had to take a lot of risk. So I think that's something that discriminates good entrepreneurs is, my level of risk is very different. But at the same time, with you guys, if you're entrepreneurs, if you're not all in, don't talk to me. And you got to be all in if you're going to do it. So I said before, passion was important, but you have to be all in. Not that you're running around some war zone potentially being killed, but you have to be all in from a time perspective, from a resource perspective, and you have to make some sacrifices. So if you have a family, you need to make sure your family is ready to take sacrifices with you. So that's a big thing for me is, be willing to go all in for your idea if you really believe in it. So how that applied to me, obviously the situation I was in was obvious how I went all in. I also, as you're saying, you serve everyone and you deliver like 200%, 300%. I mean, you do everything. You lose money on those first deals as you build customers. Your first customers are going to remember you, and they're going to be a loss leader because each good customer is going to result in, 5, 10, 20 references. But if you're just starting out and your first customer, your second customer, your third customer they can't just like you. They have to be excited. My first customers loved me. I would do anything for them.
So what were some of the specific things you did to, get that first customer, it's the government, right, to love you that? I mean, how did you go above and beyond?
We would do anything. I'll skip the first one, but the second one was just because it's not that interesting. But the second one was a messaging campaign inside an area called Yusufia, south of Baghdad. And we had to essentially deliver, we were trying to influence some activity, so we put our messages on water bottles. So I cut a deal with a local water bottle factory in Iraq. We produced water bottles with messages to sort of put things out there, and then we had to...
What would it say on the water bottles?
I don't really want to say.
Okay.
But so we had messages, and then those had to be delivered to this area, and it turned out the area there's a lot of active fighting, and my guys came back, and they didn't want to do the delivery because it was like a war zone. So I jumped in the truck with them, and we went and did it. And then the Marine Corps sort of like gave everyone commendations for like, going through a firefight, and we got done at all costs. That's an extreme example, but like when shit breaks down, you're the leader, you have to be willing to jump in. So whether that's a call center or it's doing a sale or whatever happens, like you have to be willing to step in and do the grunt work sometimes and show people that you're not just making them do it for you. You have to jump in and be part of that solution, and you have to lead from the front. I'm a big believer that you have to lead from the front. Now, as an entrepreneur in the tech space or whatever you're doing, that means do not live above the light. Don't live above your employees. Don't ever think that you're better than your employees. You always serve your employees, you serve your customers, and you overserve them.
Okay, thanks, Paige. Mark, what were some of the specific? I mean, you've had a lot of really, I think, one of the things I credit you a lot for is you just kind of find a lot of interesting, like in building Westside Rentals, there's a lot of little things. We were even talking in the office earlier, like you just started putting signs on landlords' properties saying, hey, call Westside Rentals. Like, where did that all come from?
There was a vacancy. We just felt like we were, well, I was paying the LA Times. I think I was up to like $200,000 a month, and it wasn't coming in that way. So I was sitting there with the owners, and I said, if you want to get our customers, you got to put a Westside Rental. Because we had, at the time, probably about 40 corporate companies using us. So I convinced owners. And one of the things I was thinking about when you were talking, I think what helped me in business is I sat down with owners, and I was sitting with a couple entrepreneurs today, and they came in and we started talking, and for 30 minutes straight, they told me all about their product, not one idea. But I remember sitting with Jason, Paige, and Josh, and they trying to talk to them about something that they enjoy. Like, Paige, you were going to Australia with your little nephew, and you have your sons, which is cool, and Jason, you were talking about your dad. I think as an entrepreneur, you got to realize you're talking to somebody. Get to know them about something else. And I'd talk with owners, and I'd sit down, and I really love people, and I'd read the book, and something that the book on them was enjoyable to me. And so if you're going to be in business and you're going to be an entrepreneur, you got to make sure you enjoy the people you're with and find something that you relate to. And so what happened with owners is I started convincing them, help me out with this, but also if you do it, I'm going to attract customers to you, and you're going to get the best tenants. So one of my things was I was always preaching that I'm going to get you the best tenant. And I'd be overwhelming them with, hey, let me look at that application. Let me talk to you. Why are you moving this person in? And make sure you give them, find out where they're working. And I'd bring up points to the owner, but I'd also find out like how many kids they have or something that I like. And then I'd bring up about me. And I really enjoyed those first customers. We're not, they're fanatics. You got to have fanatics talking about your business. You got to have them, when you leave, they got to be, they're preaching for you. So it can't be a one-way street. And
what were some of the things when you start? So you start Westside Rentals. You're charging people to get online for the first time.
It was like a Saturday Night Live skit. Yeah, when they'd come in, if they paid, and we were working so hard going around driving. My mom used to write down numbers on the signs, and she'd call and come in the office and help me solicit properties. A buddy of mine told me it was 1994, and he said, on the side of your car, you used to write in marker Westside Rentals. And I'm like, no, I didn't. And he goes, yes, you did. The other day, I look at a picture, I had a white, whatever it was, like those cop cars, with Westside Rentals and marker. I mean, because that was it. It was me. It was my company. I wasn't afraid to tell anybody that was the deal. I mean, it was me. So anything that I could do was all over it.
And so as far as, even like putting the signs out, what was the reaction you got when, did you call that first landlord and say, hey, can we put a sign in front of you?
I'd go meet with them and sit down. And like, just like Paige was saying, it was fanatic.
So your signs are in front of how many apartment buildings?
Not enough. I need more. But no, it's just anything that comes out there, we try to do it.
Like a number. How many signs do you have in front of apartment buildings?
We try to get about at least 5,000 a month. We try to do 5,000. So we're always trying to go into new areas. And we're trying to tell those owners to lower prices, too, so they get them rented. That helps me, too.
If you don't know, also, Mark and Dan, who's in the back, Dan Bliss, will you raise your hand? Run a fantastic business called perfectbusiness.com. They put on the Perfect Pitch Conference. They just did it in Las Vegas. They have a fantastic website. There's lots of stories, articles, software that help people exactly in our position. I definitely encourage you to check it out, perfectbusiness.com. And if you're looking to start an LLC, you can go to myllc.com as well. All right, so Josh, what were some of the specific things you did to give yourself a competitive advantage early on?
I think you got to be willing to talk with the biggest companies. Don't be afraid to approach them, and you've got to be willing to take on your largest competitors as well. Know their products inside and out, and understand how your product is going to be better than theirs, and be able to concisely explain that to the vendors. I think with you guys, I think a lot of what it comes down to is what your sales skills are with those early customers, and I mean, you might not classify it as sales skills, but how those relationships go is really important when you're starting out, especially. Those are those are really critical, and you have to be able to understand: am I burdening this person? Because we were a little two-person shop working, in living rooms, and trying to talk to Nokia and Motorola and Verizon and AT&T and these really large companies, and trying to set up meetings with them. And I think you have to have a good sense of when am I bugging this person and when am I being a valuable asset to them. So that I think is a sales skill that you really have to be in tune with other people that you're talking to. And then, I mean, I think that the constant theme of over delivering, I think that's key. I mean, once you break through, you have to deliver on all those things that you promised. Because if you don't, then I mean that's when you've lost that customer for good.
Okay. One of the last things I wanted to ask for now is, what do you think are the different characteristics of someone that can run a? Are there different characteristics of someone that runs a business successfully, who raises a lot of money up front, versus who needs to bootstrap? And Paige, now I think you're starting a new business that I think you're going to raise venture capital for. And also, how do you think about keeping costs low? Because when you go raise venture capital, that's not always the biggest topic of conversation. And one of the things that a discipline that Alana and I had is I think we both came from situations where we always had to be very judicious about finances. I'd always heard from my dad and learned from him how to cut costs and be a good finance manager, and he taught me a lot of helpful lessons that way. He was a great mentor. And Alana and I had really the same kind of philosophy. So how do you think about keeping your costs low and managing your costs? Because that's certainly one of the most important parts about bootstrapping your business.
Yeah, I think your first company, you have to bootstrap it, and then you learn how to be cheap after that. I am starting something new, and we're going for a very big execution play, and we're going for a lot of capital. I wouldn't, I've talked to a lot of VCs now, and if you're a first timer, you've got to bootstrap it. You don't understand how to save money. My other two co-founders, we've all done very good things, and I've managed massive budgets, and I know how to spend. And the other thing is you start small. When I was telling you about, I built my first company on a $3,000 contract. Even what we're going to do now, we're going for a huge play, a very massive play across the U.S. But we're going to start very small in West LA, and we're going to only work with 30 to 50 companies to start until we know exactly what we're doing. So you can have a big vision, but you have to execute tactically. And that's the mistake entrepreneurs get. And I know VCs and myself, I've purposely not withheld money, but put small amounts in, because if you haven't done it before, it's easy to let costs get out of control. And as you hire directors or VPs, they'll spend money and they'll hire people. We're looking for, we have some key positions we're hiring, but right now we're hiring people that actually do shit. We're not looking for the people that will do the master plans and the big planning, because people that do big plans then need to hire people to run big plans. So in the early days, you just hire people that get stuff done and are functional, not a bunch of managers, not a bunch of planners, but just very functional. So you start small. Whether you're going after $1 trillion market, $1 billion, a $10 million market, you're going to start small and iterate from there. And I don't know, I'm not very flashy, so I don't really spend money on stuff. I'm not much of a consumer. I'm building a company. I really don't care about spending money unless it's functional.
Okay. Josh, what are some of the things that you did to be conscious of your finances and, save money and cut corners where needed?
I started dressing like Paige ever since I met him.
Lots of money.
Let's see. Working out of the home. I mean, like, of all the people that raised their hands, I have to imagine that a lot of people running their business that have not raised capital are working from your home, right? So that saves a ton of money. But Randy, again, to plug Randy, he can save you a ton of money too once you do rent space. And it is great once you can afford that to be in this awesome tech center that we've got here in Santa Monica. But yeah, I mean, you can't have overly ornate offices necessarily. I mean, you really got to pick where you're going to impress your clients. Is it going to be in the product, and you're going to invest heavily in however it is that you develop that product? Is it going to be in your offices? I mean, maybe you run a business where the office is important, and that's where you got to invest. So you've just got to be really conscious of what's going to be most important for those clients, I think. But for us, I mean, we would save on everything. When we first got this office down here, I would park in the garage for an hour and 59 minutes and then go move my car, so I could save $7 a day. I mean, that's one of the less time efficient things I think that I did, but it is a good example of how cost conscious you sometimes are. And also knowing your creditors too. I think that's really key. So knowing when you can borrow, what you can borrow, and when you've got to pay it back. You never want to piss off your creditors. And so while you are bootstrapping, you're still going to have a relationship with a bank. You're still going to have a relationship with credit cards. So just know who you got to pay when.
Great, Mark.
I always, my biggest asset, my wife, in that she was a CPA, and I am terrible. I think I'm the worst. I mean, at trying to figure out finances. And I remember the first month, I think we were 6 months in, and we had made $54,000 in sales. And I still remember we were at Pentola on 3rd and Wilshire, and she's like, "How's everything going?" I'm like, "Oh, it's great." She's like, "Well, it seems like you keep putting money in the account." And I said, "Well, no, it's going great." She goes, "Well, let's draw everything out." And so we drew out how much I was spending a month. I was spending $74,000 a month, and I was wondering why I was putting in 20 grand every month. I was getting crushed. And I think to find out your glare spot in business, and mine was accounting, and it was disastrous because any employee asked for a raise, I'm like, "You got it." I mean, everything was like, "Yeah, you're doing great. You like me." And so I was like, "Get a raise." So I think to find out your glare spot, to me, was my key, because I had a serious glare spot, and it was accounting. And then we kept to it. Every month we have a meeting, and we go through all the accounting, and she's into it, and I'm not that into it, but I know if we're making money, I like the meetings.
So you just marry your glare spot.
Yeah,
that's whatever you're
and hope
not
she
good
doesn't
in
leave
business.
for Paige. As long as she doesn't leave, I'm good.
All right. On that note, why don't we open up to questions before? Because if your wife actually does leave for Paige, I'm going to feel pretty bad. I know he may have helped a lot of people here tonight, but I'm not going to sleep too well this evening. So if you've got a question for one of the panelists, please let me know. And
so yeah, my name's Corey. I work at Mahalo, a couple blocks down the road. We should all meet afterwards since we're all doing big things. I created a social network a couple years ago in school. Bootstrapped that myself. It's called Jewable. It's not just doable, it's Jewable. Social network of Jewish content organizations. I'm not Jewish. Clear that up right now. I learned a lot bootstrapping. One thing I wish I had known was, what are the best ways to save money?
wait, let me just get it straight. You started a social networking site called Jewable, and you want to know what's the best way to save money? And you want to know why this business is out of business?
No, it's still going. It's still going. We're well.
Okay.
Everything's good, but it really crept me up. I probably started the website, everything that's up there, with my partner for a grand total of $12,000 of our own money. We considered it the same cost of a graduate class, so we were like, whatever. But about a third of that was just frickin' lawyers, and I don't know if there was a better way I could have done that. And bootstrapping a business, what are ways to cut cost? What are ways that, where should I not spend money and where should I spend money? I guess is one of the better questions.
So like a direct answer on lawyers is, most law firms, if you have something good, will, they'll defer the fees. They'll defer anywhere from 25 to 50K of fees, so you should negotiate that.
It's good to know now. Were there any places that you guys spent too much money, or you felt bad, or you felt good spending money where you did?
Let me just jump on the previous part of the question. The question is, where do you cut fees? The fact of the matter is, when we start off, we are all in the business of selling ether. There's something that exists, but it's not tangible, it's not real, it's not there, it exists in the future, and it exists in your head. And part of what you do is you've got to get people excited enough about what it is that you're going to bring to life, such that they'll be willing to work for deferred value. And that deferred value is either revenue, money, it's equity, or it's some other promise. And when we started DocStock, we needed a designer to do a lot of work, and that person worked on deferred equity. And Alon and I worked together for months with nothing but an agreement that, hey, we're going to see where this goes and start this. And you tap into a lot of folks that are first-year associates or in law school. I know our in-house counsel, who was my previous law school professor, would kill me if I ever said, go find a law school student to do work for you, but you can. And the fact of the matter is, you can get lots of people to do lots of different things, but you have to be able to sell them something that's exciting enough that they're willing to defer whatever benefit they want right now. And the way you do that is by having an unbelievable amount of certainty. And Paige was talking about this, but if you're not certain and you don't convey that in all your communications with people, then they're not going to have that sense of certainty that what they're going to do for you can and should be deferred. And if you're able to convey that, you can get all sorts of people to do all sorts of things for you that you need right now without having to pay them cash. And Mark, I'm sure you can talk to a couple examples of that yourself.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, my first mistake was overpaying. My first mistake was really overpaying people. And it was just, I always was raising people up. And I learned, and a ton of the guys I have are still with me, which is great. But the guys who kept coming in for a raise and were always having money problems, I had to realize that was not my fault. And so I think that was one of my first problems. And then also, like you're saying, complete certainty. To get too many guys I see now, building the website becomes their whole mission. It's all got to be there. And at one point, you got to start doing business instead of overdoing the website and changing the website and this, and then your programmer's charging you everything, and you're not even starting.
Okay. Next question. Gabby will bring the mic to you. Right over here.
My name is Albert. I had a quick question.
Albert, what company are you with?
I run DealPerk.com, so we're a competitor to Gilt and Gilt City and Groupon.
DealPerk.com.
DealPerk.com. So I had a question. We've been running our company for almost a year now, and we're doing pretty good revenues. But a lot of investors, people in the space, are like, "Hey, this is way too saturated." So whenever investors look at the space, they realize that there are a lot of competitors in the space. So I'm curious, from your standpoint, from a Bootstrap standpoint, how did you, especially Mark, go against larger people with a lot of funding and a larger team?
With my thing, I love competition. Like right now, everyone for the last 5 years, Craigslist is going to crush you. And I always figure out ways to beat them. And it's like if we have to put up the walk score and you pay for that, or if you have to go and have your drivers get square footage of an apartment. I think it was, like you said,
how do you beat Craigslist? Because people can find, I mean, you do, and you do it handily in LA, but on Craigslist you can find.
List with us. The key is getting owners to list with us and conveying to them that our tenants are better than Craigslist tenants. And it's over and over telling them, hey, we have companies that we're using Google or Yahoo. Employees are coming to visit your place first. But I love the competition factor, but like what you're saying, you can't be afraid of that. That's got to be your mission. That's who you want to beat. And so I think that's what I used to wake up to, was like competition drove me to a little insanity once in a while.
I think in the tech space, if there's any part of technology that you can invest in that differentiates you from those competitors, if there's any IP, any patents, anything that you hold that those competitors don't, that you can essentially make a defensible part of your business, then that can be a really valuable asset when you're looking to raise capital like that.
I'd say you have to focus. Like Westside Rentals beats Craigslist in LA because it's focused. You wouldn't beat them nationally, maybe someday. But you focus.
Right.
So you find out, whether it's geographic focus, thematic focus, value focus. I went up against $30 billion companies in Iraq. But I focused geographically in the area that they were weak in. If I tried to compete with them today, impossible. But in a war zone, very possible to beat them. So I don't know where you're going to focus. Maybe you segment the audience and you do, daily perks around faith-based organizations or Latino, or you segment the audience and you become really great in one niche.
That's a great point.
We're gonna have, Gabby, could you give the mic to Dave? Because I think I'm actually interested to get an investor point of view on this question. One of the things I often think about, Dave, is, I think obviously VCs need to get really big exits, and they need to work with entrepreneurs that have big visions and go after, really large markets. How important is it for you to work with entrepreneurs that have successfully bootstrapped businesses? And if where does that play in the mix of wanting to fund somebody?
Depends on the stage of the company. So if we fall in love with an idea and an entrepreneur, but they haven't figured out exactly what the model is, we want to be very convinced that this person can bootstrap and stay super lean until they hit on a model. So great example of a hot company right now is Groupon, where they built a platform for group collaboration. Had nothing to do with Groupon, but just enabling groups to work together. They hadn't figured it out. No one else was using it. And then they decided to become a user themselves and started using it for Groupon, and that exploded, and that became the whole company. So until you've hit that formula where all of a sudden something's starting to explode, we as institutional investors want to know that you can bootstrap. Once you've hit that point and we think this is a model that you've hit on, all we have to do is add fuel to the fire, if you will, then we don't care about bootstrapping. We're thinking about $1 billion outcome. And so there are lots of great businesses that aren't good fits for us because we are thinking big. But that's the way we think about it.
Okay. Other questions? We got time for about 2 or 3 more. Over here.
Hi.
We'll bring the mic over to you. We got Gabby that's on mic duty over here, dressed much like Paige Craig.
I can just yell. I've got a loud voice.
Yeah, you do.
That's good. That works.
I'm Anne-Marie Penny. I'm founding partner of a digital media recruiting firm in LA since the 90s, back in the dot-com boom when we all thought we were smart. I work mostly with companies that are in a second or third stage round of financing or in a heavy growth phase. So what I'm interested is that a bootstrap mentality often is one born of enthusiasm and need. And tell me some experiences you've had where you get past that stage to the success stage, or seeing the success stage, and then the culture shifts, the attitude shifts, and how did you deal with some of those challenges that might have sneaked up on you?
Question?
Yeah. So every company starts to grow up, and the initial vision changes, and you have to challenge people. I would pick different war zones to go into. So first was Iraq, and then we did Afghanistan, and then we did North Africa. So we set new targets as we start to succeed in one. You have to have new challenges. So to keep the company fresh, it's there's a whole world out there, and if you're creative enough, you can always set new goals for your people to reach.
I think you've got to really preach to people that you're still in a startup. I mean, we're an 8-year-old company, and I like to start off a lot of the company meetings that we have where I say we're an 8-year-old startup.
How many folks are in the company now?
We have 25.
And you started off with you and one other person?
Started off with 2 people. So so it's slow growth. It's not like some of our competitors. We were early on in mobile games, and they raised hundreds of millions of dollars, and some of those competitors have gone by the wayside now. So I think you just have to try to instill that value. And for everybody that comes in, they can't come into a company thinking that it's a standard job. It's almost like they've got to be indoctrinated into, hey, you're joining a startup. We've got a long history, but we're still in that phase. I think we have gone through phases where some people think that we're riding high, and I think that in those cases you have to pair staff. And if if there's different beliefs on where the company is, then I think you have to make tough decisions like that.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think a lot of times with success, it's a bad thing sometimes, because you got to realize, like, what's that show with Donald Trump, The Apprentice, and he had a competition where the sales company won. If they won the competition, they go to his house and have caviar, and I was like, that makes me sick. And I think when I started to have some success, I kept in my mind, my greatest joy is going to the beach with my kids and hanging out, and everyone always asks me, how's your day going? I'm like, it's perfect, because if my kids are healthy, life is perfect. And if you can just cruise to the beach and keep in mind the success that you got into and now you've made some money, but you've got to have the original intent was to deliver. And I think I got caught up into it for a few years, jumping and doing everything else. And it can be bad. And I remember I'd have guys coming up saying, we're doing so great, and you got to double my salary. And it's like, you got to get back to that mentality. It's like, what out of life do you want? And I think if you can remember that, like, you didn't get into this to make a bunch of money and try to be, I don't know, drive a big car and I don't know, what do you do anyway? And it's just like, you want to cruise at the beach and hang out with your kids, and that was my deal. So I hope that answers your question, or you're just like, this guy's crazy.
They may think that anyway, Mark.
That's all
right, so let's take
it's been said.
One more question. Who's got a final question for the audience over here? Well, Westside Rental Mans, I think we gave you the chance. So we'll go over here and take one more question.
Hi, my name is Will. I'm a career and business coach, and I work with entrepreneurs in the entertainment, creative, and internet space. And my question is, what is your biggest mistake when you were starting your business, or lesson learned that you're learned from that you wouldn't do again?
Well, that's a great question, Will. Thank you.
You got all night for my answer. My problem, if you guys don't mind, because I've made so many freaking ones, but my one was telling people what we were doing, and I really was engaging a ton of the employees on like how much we're making. And the problem is like we'd have a sales board, but they never saw the opposite side, like what we're spending in advertising, what we're spending in salary. And I think if I had to do that again, I had 6 different guys who worked for me, startup companies against me. And so if I had to do one thing, everyone always says, I would never change anything. I'd change a lot. And that was one of the things that I should never have done. I should have kept that employee kind of owner relationship. There should have been some kind of line, and there was not a line. Anything, I shared everything. And so believe me, I could go on a long list of regrets.
But for you, what you talked about is that you kind of treated everybody like your buddy and friend.
Everyone was my buddy, and everything was an open book, everything. And so the problem was with an open book, and they could count your money a lot better than the bank could or I could. So that's one. Believe me, I got a lot. You'll be here all night.
I think for me it was when I got that promotion to CEO. Some of the people advising me at that time wanted me to be a little more hands-off than I had been in kind of starting the company, and I think in retrospect that was a mistake. I'm a guy that gets hands-on in a lot of different areas, and trying to essentially change myself and be somebody that I wasn't beneficial to the company.
See, my biggest mistake was probably not having a life-work balance. I pretty much did everything for the mission, for the company, and I learned a few years in, once we got out of startup mode, that I was running some people very ragged, and I assumed that they had the same tolerance and the same drive as myself, and the reality is that's not true. As an entrepreneur, it's your baby. You'll have a core team that believe in it, but if you ride people too hard for too long, you'll eventually lose great people, and you have to realize that people have families and kids and family situations, and I would make people sacrifice year over year over year and treat them the same way I treat myself. And I learned along the way that there's a way to succeed and still let employees have a life, and that the world doesn't revolve around just this vision. As an entrepreneur, you can get sucked into a vision that's so big that everything is going to be consumed by it. And at some point, parts of my life were consumed by that vision. And so I learned, with some maturity, how to have a life and how to still drive towards that vision. I think the mistakes you see there is that you can drive employees nuts and they'll leave you, and you'll lose great people. And so I just learned to have some balance for the personal things in life.
Great. So on that note, I really wanted to thank all of you. You are each entrepreneurs and businessmen that I've learned a lot from and go to for counsel and advice, and even just for an hour and a half tonight for everybody to get to hear your story and what drove you to make you successful and some of the things you did, I know is a huge benefit, and I know I'll continue to learn from each of you, and I'm just very thankful for each of your time and sharing your story and opening up. So if you join me in giving a round of applause.